Where? In the grooming?
No, my backyard.
Okay.
Sprayed with a hose.
Yeah. Tinan mo naman kasi siya, Inday, tinan mo. Agawan ka niya, Day. Nagawan niya ako isang ganyan.
Hmm. Abel, is that you?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
All right. Who's the other one? With an
Jackie!
oh, Jackie. Okay. Because I'm just want to make sure we got you on our attendance for the raffle. Okay, Lucy.
100.
Lucy's here. Thank you for joining.
50 lang.
Okay, we're just waiting for the rest to join, so let me send a reminder.
Kawawa rin ang tinan mo. Tinan mo kawawa siya. Naghihingi siya. Inday, oh. Ano?
Oh, thank you.
She's waiting na something ko.
Especially with Zyra.
Yeah, I didn't know already.
Never enough.
See, look at that.
Okay, we have Christy. So I have here Pressy, Vanji, Zaira, Emily, myself, and I know Jackie's with Arturo. Then we have Abel, Lucy. Still don't have someone from Vista.
Ano pangalan ng house dun sa isa sa Mesa? First Mesa?
Yeah. Termite, is that Cornell? Cornell, is that you? And we have Eduardo.
Hey guys.
Hey, Eduardo, are you with Francesca too?
No, she'll be here
Okay.
later today. Yeah.
Vanji, how are you, Eduardo?
Doing good. How are you guys?
Good, good. You're done with the video, right?
Not yet. For Vistas, yeah. But for Santana and Chandler and Colt, I haven't started with the editing. Yeah. I recorded, but I haven't edited it yet.
Okay, got you.
All right. Are we good? I'm gonna turn yours off and then.
Volume, yep.
All right. Make sure Cyrus said your name because if you didn't, you're not on the attendance list and you're not entered in the $50. So we'll try to watch out and see if anybody joins in later.
$50.
$50, yeah.
Yeah, $50 is good for something finding.
Real quick before we get started, Relias, the training online, some people are behind. They're just emailing me. So the people who need to catch up on Relias I'll send this out in a text too, but Ashley, Zyra, Vanjie, me, Oceana, Jackie only has one, a 15-minute one, and Pressy. And I'll send it out in the text, but it's like the new ones they updated in the last couple of months, and they're emailing me that we're behind. Christy, James, and Cyrus, and mostly Jackie, you're all up to date, so good job. But make sure you get those taken care of. And if you need help, let me or Cyrus know, and we can help you. They're really quick. I just did them both, or all three of them I had to do, and I did it in less than 45 minutes. They shouldn't take you long. And if your name's not on there, don't worry about it. It's not everybody that needs to do it. It's just mostly people at the Chandler home. So if I didn't say your name, don't worry about it. One second. Here.
Who marking here?
Maybe the guy.
It's the world.
Maybe the guy is there.
Sorry. Okay. So today we're going to do our crisis training. We have to do it once a year. And so it's just kind of an annual review. Let me share my screen and I'll pull it up. Shh, this dog.
Ano di pag ibang tao?
Oh, there's somebody out there. Sorry.
He like it different people. You know,
She just gets a little attitude.
All right. I'll send you the picture, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem. You have a good one.
You too, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can share your screen.
Yeah, can you see it? Yeah. Let me make this big. It always takes me a second to figure it out. All right, here we go. So it's our annual training on crisis prevention. So what is a crisis? A crisis is an unstable, critical, or dangerous situation that can cause acute distress. Usually defined, like I define a crisis as when a person is a threat to themselves or others. So if they're, the behavior is potentially going to harm themselves or it could hurt somebody else, that's what I usually constitute as a crisis. And it usually needs immediate intervention. So it's like we got to do something or something bad could happen. So if somebody's threatening suicide or threatening to hurt somebody else, something needs to happen or else the situation could get really out of hand. Types of crises. Can you guys think of any like situation or things that would be considered a crisis in our homes?
If someone is having some suicidal thoughts, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
he has plan of hurting himself or others.
Yep.
What else?
Anybody else? The type of crisis, something that we might consider a crisis in our group homes?
Another one is probably a very aggressive behavior
Mhm.
that is threatening to harm someone.
Yep. Anybody else? Any other ideas? Well, Cyrus is getting bonus points today. So suicidal ideations, and Cyrus defined this perfectly because I put a little asterisk next to it because sometimes people have suicidal ideations. Like we know some of our residents, from time to time might think kind of depressive thoughts and maybe say, "Oh, I'd rather not be alive," and that might not necessarily be a crisis. We should always be alerted. Like you should let me or Cyrus know if they say something like that. But really, sometimes people just have those passive thoughts. But like Cyrus said, if they have a plan, if they say, "Oh, I'm going to go get a knife from the kitchen," or "I'm going to hang myself," or something, that's when it's a crisis because they have a plan. So we really need to address that immediately. Physical aggression can be a crisis if somebody's threatening to harm somebody, if they're coming after somebody with a weapon or their fists or something, that could be a crisis. they're at risk of hurting somebody else. Self-harm behaviors, if someone's like cutting themselves or, doing something that could really harm themselves, that could be a crisis. And maybe food restrictions. So if somebody's like on a hunger strike, I've never seen that here, but I've had that at other places. These could all count as crises. But I have a little, blurb because I think they're all kind of like circumstantial because they might not be a crisis. We might have an episode of physical aggression that's not a crisis. Maybe, we've had it before where somebody just slapped somebody's hand or, that's not necessarily a crisis. So it's a crisis when it's getting out of hand and we can't control it. So what I put over here is like these situations are often able to be managed and de-escalated by staff before rising to the level of crisis. However, these situations should be taken very seriously and reported to management to ensure the safety of the resident. These situations can become a crisis if the behaviors cannot be safely reduced. So if somebody, is having, an episode of physical aggression, maybe they just slap somebody's hand and we're able to de-escalate it, they separate, they're both calmed down, and that's not a crisis. If we have somebody like we had Demont a while ago over here who was like, very physically aggressive and who's going after Vanjie. And so, that's a different type of aggression, especially if it's somebody bigger who can be very threatening. So it's kind of circumstantial. All of these are. Food restriction. If somebody refuses one meal, that's not a crisis. If I have somebody who isn't eating for days, that's a crisis. We got to figure out what to do. Immediate intervention is necessary. Anybody have any questions or like further comments or ideas on types of crises?
Yeah, just to share, one of our residents before, I know you all know David, right? He hung himself on a ceiling fan. So prior to that, we've seen a lot of signs about him being anxious, unable to sleep, always having a lot of calls from family. So that may have triggered this behavior that eventually is gonna just wanting to end everything because out of depression. So make sure we always keep an eye on those and we report them accordingly, like to me or Emily. And then we also advise their providers because sometimes they can be handled by medication and proper, de-escalation techniques or things wherein they can put their attention to something else and forget about those stress and anxiety.
Really good point. Thank you. Oh, goodness. What is not a crisis? What is not a crisis? So I just put this in here to clarify. I know there's been questions before on what is a crisis and what not is a crisis. The general rule of thumb is if somebody is a harm to themselves or others, that's a crisis. There's always exceptions, but that's kind of the general rule of thumb. If someone's about to harm themselves or somebody else, we need to figure out how to calm that situation quickly. What is not a crisis is any sort of annoying or nuisance behaviors. As annoying as they can be, and I've seen them, that's not a crisis. So if somebody's just being overly demanding or, maybe their behaviors are increased, they're really, repetitive questions, things like that, we still might have to address that with a psych provider, like something's off, but that's not a crisis. We don't need immediate help from somebody. Non-compliance is usually not a crisis. So like if somebody is refusing to take a shower, even if it's gone on quite a long time, it's usually not a crisis. When non-compliance can become a crisis is if somebody is refusing, like medically critical treatment. So if somebody's, like with Anthony before, it could have gotten to the level of crisis where when he was very psychotic, he was refusing his insulin. We were able to kind of use our interventions before it got to that point, and we were able to always get him the insulin. But if somebody, is refusing something that's medically critical, like they will, really become harmed if they don't take this med or if they don't take this medicine, then it could become a crisis. Verbal aggression, not normally a crisis unless they're very specific and threatening somebody. Like if they're saying, I'm going to harm Darren or I'm going to kill somebody, we need to really pay attention to that. To make sure that nobody else gets harmed, but usually verbal aggression is not a crisis. However, we got to watch out for it. Like Cyrus said, it's a warning sign. It's a trigger. If somebody's being verbally aggressive, we're like, oh, this could maybe lead to physical aggression. So it could become a crisis, but we just really need to watch it. It's not something that by itself is typically a crisis. And then like defiance behavior. So not doing something that I tell them to do. Like if I tell them, like we had an issue with Leisha before where she got like a shampoo bottle and she wasn't putting it down and she was putting shampoo all over the floor and she wasn't listening to staff. She wasn't giving it back. That's annoying, but that's not a crisis. She's just not doing what we tell her to do. Nobody was at risk of being harmed. She wasn't at risk of being harmed. Nobody else was. So that's not a crisis. It could, I guess, at some point rise to the level of crisis, but just because somebody's not doing what we tell them to do, that's not a crisis. How do we respond to crises? I know you guys all know this because you do it, but we have to kind of review it. We use verbal de-escalation at Blue Sky. So some places can do physical holds. We cannot. We're not licensed to do that. So we can never put somebody in a physical hold. We can never physically restrain them. Like we've had these issues with Darren where he's kind of leaving the home. We can never hold him here against his will, you know? So we only use verbal de-escalation, which is really effective in calming people down most of the time. You always want to look at their treatment and behavior plan. Most behaviors should already be in their treatment plan. And there's an intervention to tell you how to deal with that. And so a lot of behaviors can be de-escalated pretty quickly if you know the behavior plan. If you don't remember the intervention, they're in all the houses, they're posted. So make sure you check the behavior plan and know how to respond to that. Like Darren, I know we just updated his because he's been leaving the house and we can't hold him here. We can't stop him from leaving when he leaves. So we updated the treatment plan that, try to convince him not to leave. Tell him that, we'll try to find him another time to take him to the gas station or whatever it is. But if he leaves, we have to let him go. And I think in his behavior plan, we put that if because he typically always just walks to the gas station and back. So we put in there, if he's not back in 30 minutes, then we kind of might elevate it to the level of a crisis. But for Darren, that's not a crisis. But for somebody else, like if Candace is missing, that's a crisis, right? Candace can't go walk to the gas station by herself. So it's very circumstantial from resident to resident what could be considered a crisis. And I think it depends on the shift too. Like if it's day shift and a resident is missing, which has happened before, Cyrus and I have driven around and tried to find them. We didn't immediately need to call 911. We were able to do some things first. But if it's night shift, which has also happened before, and somebody's missing, we don't have the opportunity to go drive around and look for them. We might have to elevate it to a crisis a lot sooner. Always reach out to management for assistance. So if something's escalated, you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if this is a crisis. Reach out to Cyrus and I. We're always here to help, Closely monitor the resident until it's determined that the crisis has resolved. So, like for example, Cyrus was giving the example of Dave when he was kind of having his suicidal tendencies. When we responded to Dave when he had tried to hang himself, we stayed with him until the cops came, right? Because the last thing you want to do if somebody is in a crisis is leave them unsupervised. David could have still decided that he wanted to end his life, that he failed. And then if we just kind of are like, okay, stay in your room until the cops come, there's a chance that he could harm himself further. So you want to make sure you monitor the resident after a crisis or during the crisis until you're sure that they're back at their baseline, that they're not in a crisis anymore. If necessary, keep the resident safe distance from other residents. So if they're threatening other residents, if they're being physically aggressive, you want to make sure that they're not sitting right next to somebody, right? Give them a little quiet place to calm down, keep them, by themselves so they can't hurt anybody else. Listen, support, and comfort. Sometimes I would say most of the time, a lending ear is all somebody needs in a crisis. So a lot of times people get into crisis because they feel unheard. And, most of the time when I talk to somebody who's having a bad day or a crisis, I'm not really even saying much. I'm just listening, and that does a lot for people. So just listen, slow down, take the time to try to understand what's going on with them, why they're feeling this way. Utilize their PRNs. A lot of our residents have medications for anxiety, or if they're having increased psychosis, they have medications for that. So make sure you look at their PRNs. There's likely something in there that could help them get through this time. So this is the verbal de-escalation. This is like the actual skills that we use when somebody's in a crisis, what we should be doing. So the first thing you want to do is never argue with them. It only makes things worse. So even if the resident is in the wrong, even if they did something that we know is inappropriate, let's say they hit somebody and, they're upset still and they're arguing and yelling. And if I took the approach of trying to argue with them and tell them how wrong it is to hit somebody, it's not going to go over well in that moment because they're mad. Like, this is not the time to correct their behavior. All we want to do is focus on getting them calmed down. Once they're calm, then we can go back and talk about how their behavior was inappropriate. But in that moment, we don't want to argue with them. All we want to do is try to calm them down. You want to focus just on the goal of de-escalation, which is to calm down. We're not trying to convince them, especially if somebody's psychotic. You don't want to try to convince them that their psychosis isn't real. That's probably just going to make them more upset in that minute. You don't want to try to tell them how their behavior is wrong, anything like that. All you want to do is get them to calm down. And how you do that is a lot of times just listening, but also using calming phrases. You can say things like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. How can I help you? I'm here for you. Anything like that is really helpful when somebody is in a crisis. Here are some steps to de-escalate. So the first thing you want to do, if somebody's in a crisis and you're responding, first thing I always do is assess for safety. If somebody's upset and agitated, I want to know, do they have any weapons? Like, do they have anything in their hands that could hurt me? Or their hands and fists? The other day I went up to 81st because Randall was having a bad day. And when I responded, he had like forks in his hands, like he was going to use his weapons. And it just changes how you approach things. You just want to make sure that you're not going to put yourself in a situation where they could hurt you. And you want to kind of talk to them for a little bit and see if you can get the thing away from them, if they have something that they could potentially use to hurt you. You want to make sure, are they a threat to other residents? Are they sitting right next to somebody that they could potentially hurt? And then you want to position yourself for safety. I never let somebody like back me into a corner. I always make sure I have like an exit. So just things to be mindful of. I know we don't have that come up a lot, but it's always important when you're dealing with somebody who's upset to kind of watch out for things because people's behavior can change very quickly when they're upset. So after you made sure that you're safe, they're safe, you can start the process of like calming them down. If you have time, check their behavior treatment plan to see how to approach the situation. You don't always have time. It's good. That's why it's good to kind of review those behavior plans so you know ahead of time if something arises, how you should handle it. But if time allows, make sure you check the behavior plan. Like if Darren walks out the front door, you can check his treatment plan and say, okay, usually when he leaves, he's just going to the gas station to get a soda and come back. Let me give it 30 minutes. I'll text Cyrus or Emily and let them know that he's gone, but I'll give it 30 minutes and he'll probably come back. So make sure that you're aware of those treatment plans because a lot of behaviors, it tells you in there how to work with people and approach them. Use those verbal de-escalation techniques that we talked about. So now's the time to start using the phrases, the calming down, the I'm here for you, I'm listening to you, and just kind of let them talk and let them know that you're here. Don't argue with them. This is your time to kind of be on their side. Let them know that you're a friend. Call management for assistance if needed. Always report a crisis situation to management afterwards. So even if we didn't need to escalate this to a crisis, make sure that you let management know afterwards so we can just follow up on it. And then use other crisis resources if above are working. So if all else fails, we've tried all these things, the behavior's still not getting better, then that would be the time to We can use our other resources. So on the boards, there's a crisis hotline that we can call, but that should really be a last resort. We should try all these things first. And then, always 911 if the situation's getting violent or out of hand. That's always an additional resource. And then, like we talked before, monitor the resident as they calm down and return to baseline. So we just want to make sure that we get them back to where their normal baseline is. Here's this is somebody's treatment plan, but these are what the treatment plans look like. So I hope you've all looked over them, but they're all in the office at each house and they're in their cloud care charts. But this is, on the left-hand side, it'll tell you the behavior. In the middle, it's the frequency or how often we've been seeing this behavior. It goes from 1 to 5, with 1 being the least, 5 being the worst. And then the specific services and frequencies, like the interventions, what we're doing. So for this individual, which I'm sure you can figure out who it is, he's left the Blue Sky property by climbing the wall in the backyard. Was in the adjoining park yelling for someone to help him escape due to his psychotic thinking. So how we handle that elopement is different than how we handle if Candace elopes or Darren elopes. So over here in the right-hand column, we talk about monitoring him in the backyard, do frequent checks when he's in the backyard, use those de-escalation techniques and PRNs to encourage him to come home safely. And for this guy, we're going to look around the property for 10 minutes and then, if not found, call 911. So it's different than Darren, where we give him 30 minutes. This guy, if he's not back in 10 minutes, we call 911. For his psychotic thinking, we're going to attempt to redirect him to reality-based conversations that he enjoys. We're going to use his PRNs as needed. So this just gives you a good idea of what the behavior hands look like, and you can see all of them. And they're taken from what you guys tell me. So all of them should be things that we've done before that we've learned are effective. So they're not just kind of generic cut and paste. And make sure you look at these because they can be helpful. And if they're not working, let me know so we can change them so that in that crisis, we know that these things do work. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions for me or any comments, any times you've handled a crisis and it's gone well? I know Eduardo's had a lot of experience with crises lately with Randall. So anybody has anything to add?
Emily, I have a question.
Yeah.
In terms of suicide thoughts, can somebody be unspoken but he have that thought in his or her mind?
Yeah, which is hard to figure out if somebody's not saying it, but they're thinking it. For a lot of people we try to know who has a history of suicidal ideation so we can put that in the treatment plan. And then we always put in there, do frequent checks. So if you know somebody seems down, or they just seem off, it might be a good time to check with them. And you can ask them directly, are you thinking of harming yourself? But yeah, people can not say it and still think it. Just something to watch out for. But for the people that we know have a history of suicidal ideations, they are in their treatment plan.
This is not a question, maybe something that we can put into action over here at 81st, because every person is different, and each one of the residents have different behaviors to look out for. So what I was thinking, maybe do a little I would call it a playbook to have around for especially new staff and how to handle different scenarios and situations. For example, Matthew Rhines, he doesn't shower. He would not ever shower unless you offer him a Coke. So I think over here we could make a little playbook and simplify what to watch out for, how to handle different behaviors, and what to look for. For each resident. And it's just an idea, something we might put.
Yeah, I like that. A lot of that can also be put in the treatment plan. I'm sure I'd have to look at it, but I'm sure Matthew has refusing showers in his plan. So we can always add that in there. You need to offer him a Coke because otherwise he's not going to shower. And that's what those behavior plans should be used for, is once we figure out something that works for a behavior, put it in there so that like from staff to staff or shift to shift, if you get new staff, we don't have to keep saying the same thing. Just say, look at the plan. Like this is what's been working for this guy. But I like that idea.
Right. Just to put that treatment plan like simple, because sometimes it's a little.
Yeah, it can be a little jargony.
Yeah. Just
Okay, yeah, we
we
can definitely look at that.
Okay.
Well, and I was going to say as well, I feel like a lot of the treatment plans, we want them to be kind of a little more generic so that it's more of an idea, but kind of we could have an outline of really simple things that would be like specific to the scenarios that you're like, we wouldn't want to put all these things, or maybe they change week to week or month to month. But like with the treatment plan, it's not meant to change. It's a little more like broad, I guess. So, we could definitely, have the staff write up kind of what they do and then be like, how much can we actually put in a treatment plan? And then how much is just maybe a 1 page. It's just meant for staff on more specifics.
Yeah, definitely.
But I have a few examples we have not called crisis very many times in the 10 years we've had behavioral homes. But most of the times we have called crisis, it's something that doesn't come out of nowhere. It's usually something that's kind of going on. It's getting worse. Maybe their meds are kind of under adjustment and it's still not getting better. And we kind of see the signs for a while. Typically, if med adjustments aren't working, then we'll try and get them into a psych hospital for those medications to be managed. But I haven't seen a lot of things where it's just like, whoa, it comes out of nowhere. So the few times we have called crisis, I'll give you guys some examples just to know when we have. But we had somebody who was refusing to eat, and it had been months of him refusing to eat, but on and off. So our kind of rule of thumb is, hey, if he ever goes 7 days without eating, we are going to contact crisis or something like that. So we all knew it's something that's going on. We just kind of had a deadline. We had somebody who refused to get off the toilet for 24 hours. So it was like a long time. Staff he was getting PRNs. He was, the doctor was aware. They'd been trying to change meds for a while. He definitely wasn't about to agree to go to a psych hospital like he needed. But we were just like, he's not eating. He's not drinking. Sitting there that long can cause harm. So a lot of times that we have experienced issues, it's not something where you're like, oh my gosh, it's this instantaneous thing that I just don't know how to handle this situation. Because a lot of times there are PRNs we can use. There's a psych provider that, what crisis is somebody to come in that doesn't know the person, but they really know de-escalation techniques really well. They're professional at it, but you guys know these residents so much better than them, and you have that relationship. And so most of the things you guys are able to manage and de-escalate than some stranger coming into a situation. So it is there if it's like, oh my gosh, I can't manage this. This is dangerous. It's a resource that's there. It's just not something that typically we're utilizing a lot, but we want to not forget that it's available for us. I don't know if you have any other examples, Emily, of stuff that you might think might come up where it'd be like, oh yeah, this is when we've had to call crisis.
I haven't had to call crisis here a lot. I never have I called crisis here. I've called them before, but like I would expect like we don't call crisis a lot because we're a lower level acuity. So like day to day people aren't having these kinds of behaviors. I'm sure like long-term care facilities that are behavioral or like higher acuity facilities or like inpatient hospitals are using crisis a lot more because their people are more unstable. Our people are stable, so I wouldn't expect us to need to call crisis. I've called crisis before when like somebody was like barricading themselves in their room. They're very psychotic. They're threatening to hurt themselves. But yeah, here I can't really even think of a situation where we should have called crisis. All the times that we've had these like crises, we staff were able to be there and address them. Like when David was having suicidal thoughts, crisis wouldn't have been very helpful because they didn't know David. I knew him a lot better. So if Cyrus and I are here, like a lot of this is just better managed by us. And we should definitely try to use all our resources first and exhaust all those before we use somebody else. Because in my opinion, the times that I've experienced crisis, just because they don't know the resident, they don't do a great job. I should say that. We do a better job. So
yeah, I agree. We definitely want to utilize all our resources first. So
bringing in crisis. And if you have the time, call Cyrus and I and be like, is this appropriate to call crisis? And we can give you our opinion. Sometimes crisis, a lot of time you don't have that time, but if you do, check with us first and we can help you out. We have 3 minutes left. So just a reminder, like I talked about, I'm going to send this out in a text, but if you have Relias, please get on those because they're starting to email me that we're behind compliance on some. They don't take long. Cyrus and I can help you. And then Cyrus printed out the TB educations for both down here, and I emailed them to the house managers up there. So that's for everybody. Everybody needs to do an annual TB education. It's just a form, talks about TB, the risks, all the good stuff. It's the same one that we do every year. So just make sure that you review that, sign it, and give it to your manager so they can send it back to me and I can make sure that everybody has it in their chart so we're good for another year. Any final questions or comments? All right. Thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you.
thank you,
guys.
Emily. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.